Girl sees a millionaire in a cage over alligators, then she does this. Comment what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me which city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story and get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scorching midday sun turned the stones of the Cypress Bayou into hot coals as Lily approached the bank, her bare feet stepping carefully among the dry twigs. At 4 years old, the girl had learned that the fruits falling from the trees near the bayou were her best chance for a decent meal. Her stomach had been rumbling for 2 days, ever since the last piece of bread she had managed to get in downtown Beaufort Creek had run out. She was a child too small for her age, with sun-bleached brown hair and clothes that had seen better days. She had been living on the streets of the small Louisiana town for months, ever since the woman who'd been taking care of her simply disappeared one morning, leaving her all alone in the world. Lily didn't understand why it had happened, but she had quickly learned to survive with her sharp intelligence and keen instincts. As she searched for fallen fruit, a desperate scream cut through the heavy afternoon air. The sound came from somewhere near the bayou, but she couldn't pinpoint the source. Lily stopped her search and pricked up her ears. There it was again, a man's scream, filled with panic and despair. Following the sound, the girl walked along the bank until she saw a rusty metal structure rising over the water. It was an old observation tower that fishermen used during the season for bigger fish. But now, suspended by ropes tied to the top of the tower, a metal cage was swinging dangerously over the dark waters of the bayou. Inside the cage, a middle-aged man was screaming for help, his graying hair stuck to his face with sweat. Theodore Caldwell, though Lily didn't know his name, had been trapped for hours in that cruel device. His business suit was crumpled and dirty, and he stared in terror at the waters below, where dark shapes moved slowly. "Please, someone help me," Theodore shouted, shaking the cage in desperation. His voice was hoarse from screaming, and his hands were bleeding from trying to force the iron bars. Lily watched the situation for a few moments, her small but intelligent eyes analyzing every detail. The tower was about 20 feet high, with an iron ladder on the right side leading to a platform at the top. The ropes holding the cage were tied to a pulley, and there was a lever that controlled the raising and lowering system. Without hesitation, the girl began to climb the structure. Her 4 years on the streets had given her impressive agility, and she climbed the iron rungs with the confidence of someone much older. Theodore saw her approaching and felt a mix of hope and despair. "Little girl, be careful. It's very dangerous," he yelled, but Lily had already reached the top of the tower. The child examined the mechanism for a few seconds, her mind quickly processing how it worked. There were 2 main ropes, one supporting the cage and another controlling its height. If she pulled the wrong rope, the man would fall directly into the water where the alligators waited. With meticulous care, Lily began to work on the ropes. Her small hands moved with surprising precision, slowly releasing the support rope while firmly holding the control rope. The cage began to descend gradually toward a shallower part of the bayou, away from the predators. "That's it, little girl." Slowly, encouraged Theodore, still not believing that such a small child could be saving his life. When the cage finally touched the sandy bank, Theodore managed to force open the door, which was only latched, not welded shut. He stumbled out of the metal prison, his legs trembling from the tension and the time spent in an uncomfortable position. Lily climbed down from the tower with the same agility as before and timidly approached the man. Theodore watched her closely, noticing her ragged appearance, but also the bright intelligence in her brown eyes. "You saved me," he said, still processing what had happened. "How did a little girl like you understand that mechanism?" Lily shrugged, as if solving complex problems was natural for her. "You just had to release the right rope," she replied in her childish voice, but with a logic that impressed Theodore. "What's your name, little one?" Lily, she answered, looking at the ground. And you? Theodore. Theodore Caldwell. He looked around, trying to understand where he was and how he had gotten there. His last memories were hazy. He was in his office at the shipping company, reviewing contracts, and then nothing. Do you live around here? I live on the streets, Lily said simply, without self-pity, just stating a fact. The answer hit Theodore like a punch. This extraordinary girl, who had just saved his life with an intelligence many adults didn't possess, was living abandoned on the streets of Beaufort Creek. And your family? Your parents? I don't have any, Lily replied, starting to walk away. She was used to adults who asked questions but then disappeared from her life. Wait, said Theodore, struggling to stay on his feet. His head was still fuzzy, but one thing was clear. He couldn't just let this child go back to the streets. Are you hungry? Lily's eyes lit up, but she hesitated. She had learned to be wary of offers of food from strangers. I promise I won't hurt you, said Theodore, extending his hand. You saved my life. It's the least I can do. As they walked together along the bayou bank toward the town, Theodore tried to piece together what had happened. His last memories were fragmented, but he began to suspect that someone had drugged him and put him in that trap. But who? And why? Caldwell Shipping had been facing some financial troubles lately, especially after his partner Warren had disappeared with important documents 3 weeks ago. But would that be enough for someone to want to kill him? He looked at Lily, who walked beside him with small but determined steps. There was something special about this child, something that went beyond her precocious intelligence. Maybe it was the way she had faced a dangerous situation without hesitation, or the way she solved problems with an impressive logic for her age. When they reached downtown Beaufort Creek, Theodore took Lily to a simple diner. He watched her eat voraciously, but also with surprisingly good manners for someone who lived on the streets. There were mysteries surrounding this girl, just as there were mysteries surrounding his own kidnapping. Lily, he said when she had finished eating, would you like to come home with me? I have a big place, and you could stay there while we decide what to do. The girl looked at him with her big, intelligent eyes, weighing the offer. Something about this man felt safe, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. Will you let me leave if I want to? Of course, Theodore answered without hesitation, but I hope you'll consider staying. As they left the diner, Theodore had no idea that his life and Lily's were about to intertwine in ways neither of them could imagine. Secrets buried for years would begin to surface, and the girl who had saved his life would turn out to be the key to mysteries he didn't even know existed. The afternoon was ending when they arrived at Theodore's house, a renovated colonial-style mansion on the outskirts of Beaufort Creek. Lily looked at the house with curiosity, but also with the caution of someone who had learned not to easily trust places that seemed safe. Theodore's house was very different from any place Lily had ever been. Wide hallways with dark hardwood floors, antique furniture that seemed to tell stories, and above all, a silence that was not haunted by fear, but rather welcoming. The girl followed Theodore with cautious steps, her eyes absorbing every detail. "Mr. Caldwell, you're back!" exclaimed a woman's voice from the kitchen. A woman of about 45 emerged down the hall, wiping her hands on a floral apron. Her brown hair was tied in a simple bun, and her face wore an expression of genuine relief. "Isabel," said Theodore, and Lily noticed how his voice softened when he said the name. "This is Lily. She helped me today." Isabel Shaw had taken care of the Caldwell house since Theodore was a teenager. An orphan herself, she had been taken in by the family when she was just 15, first as a kitchen helper, then gradually taking on all the household responsibilities. Over time, she developed a silent love for Theodore that she kept as a precious and painful secret. "Helped you how?" asked Isabel, but her eyes were already fixed on Lily's battered appearance. She recognized an abandoned child when she saw one. It's a long story, replied Theodore, running a hand through his hair. First, could you prepare a bath for Lily? And maybe find some clothes that fit her? Of course, said Isabel, crouching down to the girl's level. Hi, sweetie. I'm Isabel. How about a nice warm bath and some clean clothes? Lily hesitated, looking to Theodore for confirmation. He nodded encouragingly, and she allowed Isabel to lead her up the stairs. While preparing the bath, Isabel watched Lily discreetly. There was something familiar about the girl, something she couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the way she held her head, or the curve of her eyebrows. A strange feeling of déjà vu bothered her. "How do you know Mr. Caldwell?" asked Isabel gently, as she tested the water temperature. "He was stuck in a cage by the bayou," Lily answered naturally, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "I got him out." Isabel froze. Stuck in a cage? There were alligators underneath. He was screaming a lot. The housekeeper felt a shiver run down her spine. Someone had tried to hurt Theodore, and a 4-year-old child had saved him. As she helped Lily undress for the bath, Isabel noticed something that made her heart race. A small birthmark on the girl's left shoulder, in the shape of a crescent moon. That mark, she had seen it before, a long time ago. But where? After the bath, Isabel found a nightgown left over from when she cared for a cousin's children who occasionally visited the house. The garment was a bit big on Lily, but it was clean and comfortable. "Much better," said Isabel, combing the girl's damp hair. "Now you look like a princess." Lily smiled shyly. It had been so long since someone had treated her with kindness that she'd forgotten how good it felt to be cared for. When they went down for dinner, Theodore was sitting at the kitchen table, still trying to sort through his confused memories of the day. He had called his doctor, who would examine him the next day, and also his lawyer, to report the incident. "How are you feeling?" asked Isabel, serving a plate of gumbo for Lily. Confused, Theodore admitted, "I remember being in the office around 2 in the afternoon, reviewing the contracts for the new shipping route. After that, nothing. I woke up in that cage with no idea how I got there. And the staff, did anyone see anything strange? Everett said I left around 3, saying I was going to meet someone about the Warren situation. But I don't remember setting up any meeting." Isabel frowned. Everett Nash had been the company's accountant for 8 years, a meticulous and seemingly trustworthy man. But lately, she had noticed something different in his behavior when he visited the house to discuss business with Theodore. Lily ate in silence, but her attentive ears caught every word of the conversation. She had learned on the streets that information could be valuable, and she instinctively filed away everything she heard. "And what about Warren?" asked Isabel. "Any news?" Theodore's face darkened. Warren Marshall had been his partner and friend for 15 years. 3 weeks ago, he had simply disappeared, taking with him important documents about their shipping operations. The police had opened an investigation, but so far, no concrete leads had emerged. "Nothing," Theodore replied bitterly. "It's as if he vanished into thin air. And without those documents, we can't access some of our main accounts. Do you think he ran off with the money?" "I don't know what to think anymore, Isabel. Warren and I built this company together. He knows my children. He was the best man at my wedding. I can't believe he would betray me like this, but..." The conversation was interrupted by the phone ringing. Theodore answered with a tense expression. "Hello? Dr. Harris?" His expression gradually changed from concern to surprise. "What? Are you sure?" There was a long pause. Yes. I'll be there first thing tomorrow. Thank you for letting me know." When he hung up, Theodore was pale. "What was it?" asked Isabel. "They found Warren. He's been in St. Luke's Hospital in New Orleans for 3 weeks. Apparently he had a serious car accident and lost his memory." The silence that followed was heavy. If Warren had been hospitalized for 3 weeks, Then he hadn't run off with any documents. Someone else was behind the disappearance of the papers. "I'm going to New Orleans tomorrow," Theodore decided. "I need to talk to him, see if he can remember anything." That night, Isabel prepared a room for Lily on the second floor of the house. It was a small but cozy room with a single bed and a window overlooking the garden. As she arranged the sheets, the housekeeper couldn't get the girl's birthmark out of her mind. After making sure Lily was sleeping comfortably, Isabel went up to the attic. There, among old boxes and furniture covered in sheets, she looked for something specific. She found what she was looking for in a wooden box stored in the back, an old porcelain doll that had belonged to the house long ago. With trembling hands, she examined the doll. On the toy's left shoulder, delicately painted, was a small crescent moon, identical to Lily's birthmark. Isabel sat down heavily on an old chair, the doll in her lap. This doll had belonged to Claire, a young maid who had worked at the house 15 years ago. Claire was a sweet girl, only 18, who handled the cleaning and helped in the kitchen. She had gotten pregnant and disappeared abruptly, leaving only a vague letter about pursuing new paths. At the time, there was a rumor that the child's father was Owen, Theodore's younger brother. Owen had always been irresponsible and a womanizer, but when questioned, he vehemently denied any involvement with Claire. He said the girl had lied to try and get money from the family. But what if Claire hadn't lied? And what if the child Theodore had brought home was? Isabel shook her head. It was impossible. Many children could have similar birthmarks. But her heart was pounding, and a growing certainty was forming in her chest. In the room below, Lily had woken up from a nightmare. She had dreamed of a woman with long hair calling to her, holding out her arms. The woman's voice was sweet and familiar, but when Lily tried to run toward her, the figure always disappeared. The girl got up and walked to the window. The house's garden was bathed in moonlight, creating dancing shadows in the trees. It was so different from the cold streets where she used to sleep. For the first time in months, she felt safe. But there was something else, a strange feeling that she had been in this place before, even though she knew it was impossible. It was as if the house whispered secrets she couldn't comprehend. The next morning, Theodore was preparing to travel to New Orleans when Everett arrived at the house for an emergency meeting. The accountant was visibly nervous, his hands trembling slightly as he arranged the papers in his briefcase. "Theodore, we need to talk about the company's situation," said Everett, casting curious glances at Lily, who was having breakfast in the kitchen. "You can speak in front of her," said Theodore, "and Isabel too. We have no secrets here." Everett hesitated. "Well, without the documents Warren took, we're facing serious cash flow problems. The banks are pushing for guarantees we can't provide without those papers. But now we know Warren didn't run away," Theodore replied. "He's hospitalized. I'm going to talk to him today and find out where the documents are." Everett's expression changed rapidly, a shadow of something like panic crossing his face. "Hospitalized? Since when?" "For 3 weeks. Car accident with memory loss." Everett swallowed hard. "Well, even so, we need to act quickly. Maybe it would be better if I went with you to New Orleans. I can help guide the questions about the financial aspects." Lily, who had remained quiet, suddenly looked up. There was something in the man's voice that bothered her, a falseness that her childish intuition could detect. "Sir," she said to Theodore, "can I go with you?" "To New Orleans? It's a long trip, little one." "I'd like to go," Lily insisted, not quite knowing why she felt she should be present at that meeting. Theodore smiled. "Of course you can. Isabel, are you coming too?" Isabel nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on Everett. She had noticed how disturbed he had become upon hearing about Warren, and a suspicion was beginning to form in her mind. As they prepared for the trip, none of them imagined that the next day's revelations would change everything they thought they knew about their own lives. St. Luke's Hospital in New Orleans was a modern building that contrasted with the colonial architecture of Beaufort Creek. Lily held Isabel's hand tightly as they walked through the white corridors, her curious eyes watching the constant movement of doctors and nurses. Warren Marshall was in the neurological wing, in a private room with a view of the hospital's inner courtyard. When they entered, they found a 50-year-old man with a face marked by recent scars and the vacant eyes of someone struggling to recover lost pieces of his own life. "Warren," said Theodore softly, approaching the bed. "It's me, Theodore." The man in the bed turned his head slowly, his eyebrows furrowing in concentration. "Theodore. I know that name. Are you my friend? I'm your partner. We've owned Caldwell Shipping together for 15 years. Warren massaged his temples with trembling hands. "Shipping. Yes, I remember ships. Big ships. But it's all fuzzy, like a dream." Everett approached the bed, his nervousness increasingly evident. "Warren, do you remember taking some documents from the company? Important contracts." "Documents," repeated Warren, looking even more confused. Something was wrong. Someone was messing with the numbers. I discovered something." The tension in the room intensified. Isabel noticed how Everett paled slightly. "What did you discover?" pressed Theodore. "I can't remember clearly, but there was someone stealing, someone we trusted." Warren looked directly at Everett. You were there, in the office, the last time I remember being there." Everett laughed nervously. "Of course I was. I worked there. But you were very confused that day, Warren. You said you were going to travel for a while, to sort out some personal problems." "No," said Warren more firmly. "I never said that. I had discovered fake accounts, unauthorized withdrawals." His hands trembled with the effort to retrieve the memories. "You gave me something to drink. Coffee. You said you were going to help me calm." The sentence was cut off as Warren ran a hand over his forehead, groaning in pain. "My head. Whenever I try to remember that part, it hurts so much." Dr. Miranda, the neurologist in charge of the case, entered the room at that moment. "I apologize for the interruption, but I noticed the patient is agitated." "Doctor," said Theodore, "my partner was starting to recover some important memories. Is it normal for him to feel pain?" "Unfortunately, yes. The accident caused a significant head trauma. But there's something interesting we discovered recently." The doctor consulted the chart. The toxicology reports done when he was admitted showed traces of substances that were not consistent with normal pain medication. "What kind of substances?" asked Isabel. "High doses of benzodiazepines, mixed with other substances that can cause mental confusion and temporary memory loss. As if someone had been regularly administering these drugs before the accident." The silence that followed was tense. Everett began to sweat profusely, his hands trembling visibly as he pretended to consult some papers in his briefcase. Lily, who had remained quiet throughout the conversation, suddenly tugged on Isabel's skirt. "Aunt Isabel," she whispered, "that man is lying." Isabel looked down, surprised. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "He's scared, just like the bad men on the street when the police come by." Lily's childhood intuition, sharpened by months of living on the streets where she had learned to recognize danger, was picking up on signals the adults weren't consciously noticing. Theodore, who had overheard the girl's comment, watched Everett more closely. His trusted accountant was visibly nervous, sweating excessively for the hospital's air conditioning. "Everett," said Theodore slowly, "would you mind showing me your briefcase? Maybe there's a document in there that could help Warren's memory." "No, I don't have anything relevant here," Everett answered quickly, clutching the briefcase to his chest. "They're just routine spreadsheets." At that moment, Warren had a spasm of pain and shouted, "The keys! You took the keys to my safe! I remember now!" The accusation echoed through the room like a thunderclap. Everett took a step back, his face now completely white. "Warren, you're confused," Everett began to say, but was interrupted. "I'm not confused," shouted Warren, trying to sit up in bed. "You drugged me for weeks, making me drink that poisoned coffee every afternoon. And when I found out what you were doing, you... He tried to kill you," completed Lily in her childish voice, but with a certainty that chilled everyone's blood. Everett looked at the girl with real panic in his eyes. "How could a 4-year-old have figured that out?" "You set up the car accident," continued Warren, the memories returning in painful flashes. "You said we were going to meet a new client. You took me to that dangerous road near the Atchafalaya Basin. When I stopped the car because you said you were feeling sick, you hit me on the head with something." Dr. Miranda had discreetly called hospital security. Everett realized he was cornered and made a desperate move, trying to run out of the room. It was Lily who stopped him. The girl, with the same agility she had shown when saving Theodore, stood in front of the door and yelled, "He's getting away." Security arrived in time to detain Everett, who collapsed in tears and confessions. For the past 2 years, he had embezzled nearly $500,000 from the company, creating fake accounts and forging documents. When Warren discovered the irregularities, Everett began to drug him gradually to confuse his mind, buying time to erase the evidence. "I didn't want to hurt him," Everett sobbed as he was led away. "I just wanted him to forget what he had discovered, but he was too stubborn. He kept investigating." Theodore was in shock. 8 years of trust betrayed by someone he considered almost a brother. "The documents," said Warren, still weak, but with his mind becoming clearer. "They're in my safe at home. Everett never found the keys. I hid them in the office, inside that old typewriter you always said you were going to throw away." As they returned to Beaufort Creek that afternoon, Isabel couldn't stop thinking about Lily's extraordinary intuition. The girl had not only saved Theodore physically, but had just helped unmask a criminal who could have completely destroyed the company. "How did you know he was lying?" Isabel asked Lily, who was dozing in the back seat of the car. "He smelled like the man who tried to hurt me on the street once," the girl answered sleepily. "He smelled like fear and bad things." Theodore exchanged worried glances with Isabel in the rearview mirror. What kind of life had this child led to develop such sharp instincts? Back at home, while Theodore called his lawyer to report the case's developments, Isabel took Lily to her room and decided it was time to investigate her suspicions about the girl's identity. "Lily," she said gently, "do you remember your mother?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. "A little bit. She used to sing to me. She had long hair and smelled like flowers." "And do you know her name?" "Claire," Lily whispered. Her name was Claire. Isabel's heart stopped. Her suspicions were confirmed. This extraordinary girl, who had appeared in their lives like a saving angel, was the daughter of Claire Shaw, the young maid who had disappeared pregnant 15 years ago. But if Lily was Claire's daughter, and if the rumors at the time were true about the paternity, that meant the girl was. "Isabel!" Theodore shouted from downstairs. "Can you come down? We have an unexpected visitor." When Isabel came down with Lily, she found Owen Caldwell in the living room. Theodore's younger brother, now 42, was thinner and looked to be under great stress. "Owen," said Theodore coldly, "what a surprise. I haven't seen you in months. Theodore, we need to talk. Alone." Owen looked at Lily with a strange expression, as if he were seeing a ghost. It was in that moment that Isabel noticed something that made her feel dizzy. Lily's eyes were identical to Owen's. The same almond shape, the same shade of brown, even the small golden fleck in the left iris. "Lily," said Isabel with a trembling voice, "how about you go play in the garden while the adults talk?" After the girl left, Owen collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "She's grown so much," he murmured. "She looks just like Claire." Theodore was confused. "What are you talking about, Owen?" Isabel stepped forward. He's talking about his daughter, Theodore. Lily is Owen's daughter with Claire. The silence that followed was deafening. Theodore looked at his brother, then at Isabel, trying to process the bomb that had just been dropped in his living room. "That's impossible," Theodore said slowly. "You denied any involvement with Claire at the time." "I lied," Owen confessed, tears streaming down his face. "I was young. I was scared of our parents' reaction, of your reaction. When Claire told me she was pregnant, I sent her away. I told her she was lying, that the child wasn't mine." The truth fell upon them like an avalanche. Lily, the girl who had saved Theodore, who had unmasked Everett, who showed extraordinary intelligence, was his niece. And all this time, she had been living on the streets while her own family didn't even know she existed. "Where is Claire now?" asked Isabel, though her heart already knew the answer from Owen's desperate tone. "She died when Lily was born," Owen whispered. "Complications in childbirth. I only found out years later when I tried to find them, but it was too late. The girl had disappeared into the system, passed from family to family until she ended up on the streets," completed Theodore, his voice filled with a cold fury Isabel had never seen before. Owen looked up, his eyes full of despair. "I've been looking for her for years, Theodore. I spent everything I had trying to find her. When I heard you had taken in a little girl, I came to see if by some miracle." "A miracle," Theodore repeated. "Is that what you call finding your daughter after abandoning her for 4 years?" In the garden, Lily had stopped playing. Through the open window, she could hear bits of the adults' conversation. Words like daughter, Claire, and abandonment reached her ears, creating a confusing mosaic that her childish heart was beginning to understand. The girl looked at her small hands, then at the house where she had found safety for the first time in years. Something was changing, she could feel it. But this time, she wasn't sure if the change would be good or bad. The days following the revelation about Lily's true identity were the hardest the Caldwell house had ever experienced. Theodore could barely look at Owen without feeling a deep anger burning in his chest, while Isabel struggled between the joy of having discovered the girl's origin and the pain of knowing how many years of suffering could have been avoided. Lily, for her part, sensed the tension in the air like the sensitive child she was. Although she didn't fully understand the implications of the adults' revelations, she knew her presence had caused some kind of family storm. She started having constant nightmares again, this time dreaming of a long-haired woman who cried and repeatedly walked away from her. "We need to talk about what to do now," said Isabel on a rainy morning, while Lily was still asleep. Theodore and Owen were sitting on opposite sides of the kitchen table, the tension between them almost palpable. "There's nothing to discuss," Theodore replied coldly. "Lily stays with me. You lost any right to call her your daughter when you abandoned her." "I was young, I was scared," Owen began, but Theodore cut him off. "She was on the streets, Owen, starving, sleeping in the open, being mistreated by those who should have protected her. While you were scared, your daughter was fighting to survive." Isabel watched the argument with a broken heart. She had known both brothers since they were teenagers, and knew that beneath Theodore's justified anger there was also pain for the betrayal of someone he loved. "And you, Isabel?" asked Owen desperately. "Do you also think I don't deserve a chance to know my daughter?" The question hit Isabel hard. For years, she had kept painful secrets to protect the Caldwell family. First, her unrequited love for Theodore. Then, her suspicions about what really happened to Claire. And now, "There's something else you need to know," Isabel said slowly, her voice heavy with years of repressed guilt. "About Claire, about what really happened to her." Both brothers turned to look at her, realizing from the tone of her voice that more devastating revelations were to come. "I knew where she was," Isabel confessed, tears starting to stream down her face. After Owen sent her away, Claire came to me. She was desperate, with no money, nowhere to go. I helped her hide in a guest house in Alexandria. The silence that followed was deafening. Owen turned pale, while Theodore stared at her with an expression of shock and betrayal. "You knew where she was all this time, and didn't tell us," Theodore whispered. "She made me promise not to tell anyone in the family," Isabel sobbed. "She said she wanted to raise her daughter away from you all, away from the rejection she had suffered. I sent money when I could, but—" "But what?" pressed Owen, getting up from his chair. "She had complications in childbirth, a severe hemorrhage. By the time she managed to get a message to me, it was too late. When I got to Alexandria, Claire was already gone, and the baby had been taken by a distant aunt who promised to take care of her." Isabel paused, struggling to continue the story she had carried alone for so long. "I tried to find the aunt, but she had moved. I spent years looking for Lily, following false leads, paying private investigators with my own money. I never stopped looking." The revelation left both brothers in a state of shock. Theodore realized that the woman he had silently loved for years had carried a burden alone that should not have been hers alone. "Why did you never tell us?" Theodore asked in a choked voice. "Because you would have gone looking too. And I thought it would only cause more pain for everyone," Isabel replied. "And because I felt guilty. If I had insisted that Claire stay here, if I had forced Owen to take responsibility—" "The blame isn't yours," said a small voice from the stairs. Everyone turned to see Lily standing on the bottom step, still in her pajamas, her eyes red from crying. It was clear she had heard much of the conversation. "Lily, sweetie," Isabel began, but the little girl held up a small hand. "I remember Aunt Carol," Lily said, with an impressive maturity for her 4 years. "She always said I was a curse, that because of me, my mother was gone. Now I understand." The child came down the rest of the stairs and approached Owen, studying his face with curiosity. "Are you my real father?" she asked directly. Owen knelt to her level, tears running freely down his face. "I am," he whispered. "And I am so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything you went through because of me." Lily studied him for a few more seconds before asking, "Are you going to send me away again?" The question was like a knife to Owen's heart. "Never," he promised, his voice choked with emotion. "If you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making up for the years we lost. But I want to stay here too," said Lily, looking at Theodore. "Uncle Theodore saved me, just like I saved him. And Aunt Isabel takes such good care of me. It was Theodore who found the solution that would change everything for the better." "What if we became a real family?" he suggested, looking at Isabel with a new intensity. "Owen, you can move in here. There are enough rooms, and Lily needs to know her father, but she also needs stability, people who love her unconditionally." He turned to Isabel, taking her hands tenderly. "Isabel, I've been a blind fool for all these years. You've always been by my side, taking care of me, my family, carrying burdens that weren't yours. I love you. I always have, but I was too lost in my own pain to realize it." Isabel's face lit up with a happiness she thought she would never experience again. "And you, little one," said Theodore, crouching down to speak to Lily, "would you like to be our daughter officially? Mine and Isabel's, with your father Owen being part of our family too?" Lily looked at each of the adults, at Theodore, who had taken her in without question, at Isabel, who treated her with such affection, and at Owen, who, despite his past mistakes, clearly loved her and was deeply sorry. "Does that mean I'll have 3 people who love me?" she asked. "It means you'll have a whole family that loves you," replied Isabel, kneeling beside Theodore. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. Owen had moved into a nearby house, but spent every day at the main house, patiently rebuilding his relationship with Lily. The girl, now enrolled in a special school for gifted children in New Orleans, which she attended 3 times a week, was flourishing in ways no one could have predicted. Warren had fully recovered and resumed his position at the company, which was now thriving more than ever without Everett's sabotage. The accountant had been convicted and was serving his sentence, and all the stolen money had been recovered. Theodore and Isabel were married in a simple ceremony at the church in Beaufort Creek, with Lily as the flower girl and Owen as the best man. The girl had insisted on taking flowers to Claire's grave before the ceremony, a final farewell she said she had dreamed her mother asking for. But the most significant transformation had been the creation of the Claire Shaw Foundation, dedicated to finding and helping vulnerable children in the region. Lily had suggested the project, saying she wanted other children like her to find families who would love them. "Do you have any regrets about how it all happened?" asked Isabel on a sunny afternoon, watching Lily play in the garden with Owen. "About the suffering she went through?" "Of course," replied Theodore, hugging his wife, "but about the rest. Maybe it was necessary for everything to happen exactly this way. If it weren't for the kidnapping, I never would have met Lily. If it weren't for her intelligence, we never would have discovered Everett's betrayal. If the truth hadn't come out, you never would have been freed from the secrets you carried. And if it weren't for all that," added Isabel, "maybe you never would have realized you loved me." "Or maybe," said Lily, who had approached without them noticing, "maybe it all happened because it was supposed to. My mom always appears in my dreams now, and she's happy. She says she did everything right, that she brought me where I was meant to be." That night, as Lily slept in her room decorated with drawings of birds she had made herself, Theodore reflected on how a 4-year-old child had completely transformed their lives. She had appeared like a saving angel, literally pulling him from a trap that could have cost him his life. But in reality, he was the one who had been saved in a much deeper way, saved from an empty life, from superficial relationships, from an existence without real purpose. The company was now not just about profits, but about creating opportunities for the community. The house was not just a place to live, but a home filled with love and laughter. And Lily was not just a child he had helped. She was the daughter of his heart, the niece of his blood, and the reason he woke up every day with gratitude. Owen had found redemption through the unconditional love of his daughter, who, despite everything she had been through, had managed to forgive and open her heart to the father who had abandoned her. Isabel had finally found the love she had always dreamed of, not just with Theodore, but with the complete family she had always wanted. And Lily, the girl who had started the story by saving a man from a cage over dangerous waters, had ended up saving them all from their own emotional prisons. In the final scene, 6 months after that first dramatic encounter at the Cypress Bayou, the reunited family celebrated the first anniversary of the Claire Shaw Foundation. Dozens of children from the region had already benefited from the project, finding safe homes and educational opportunities. Lily, now a confident and happy girl, cut the celebratory cake surrounded by her family, Theodore and Isabel as her adoptive parents, Owen as her biological father who had learned to truly love her, and Warren as the surrogate uncle who considered her his savior. "What do you wish for next year?" asked Theodore as she blew out the candles. "That more children find families that love them like you love me," Lily replied without hesitation, "and that my mom stays happy where she is, knowing that I'm okay." As the family celebrated under the Louisiana stars, none of them could have imagined that their story would become a local legend. The story of the girl who saved a man and ended up saving an entire family, turning pain into love, abandonment into belonging, and tragedy into a second chance for everyone. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you so much.